Michigan Bean Commission welcomes you to today's episode of the Michigan Bean Academy webinar series. We are delighted you could join us for Reasons for the Disconnect Between Dietary Recommendations and Legume Consumption Patterns in the U.S., presented by Dr. Gerd Bobe, Associate Professor, Oregon State University, and Principal Investigator at the Linus Institute. This is Barbara Ivins, Registered Dietitian, your host for today's webinar. The Michigan Bean Commission is pleased to offer a series of free accredited webinars, many with a plant-forward eating focus that cover a broad range of contemporary nutrition and food topics. Webinars are a blend of research, science, and practice to help nutrition professionals stay informed on recent developments on relevant topics. These webinars are funded as part of a 2021-2022 USDA grant to the Michigan Bean Commission. A few webinar logistics. A handout of today's presentation is available to download at the Michigan Bean Commission website. The continuing education certificate is available as well to download after the webinar at the same professional website. Dr. Bobe will answer questions at the end of the webinar. Please submit questions during his presentation using the Q&A feature on your computer screen. So we'd like to welcome today's faculty, Dr. Gerd Bobe. He is an associate professor at Oregon State University, principal investigator at the Linus Institute, where he focuses on personalized disease prevention using dietary flavonols and dry beans. After studying for his undergraduate degree in Germany, he received his MS and PhD degrees in 1997 and 2002, respectively, from Iowa State University, and his MPH degree in public health nutrition in 2006 from Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Bobe worked as a postdoc at Michigan State University and the National Cancer Institute, where he started his work on the health benefits of regular dry bean consumption, which he continues at Oregon State University. Dr. Bobe has authored or co-authored over 140 peer-reviewed articles. The learning objectives for today's webinar: upon completion, you should be able to describe the disease prevention benefits of regular legume consumption, outline current U.S. legume consumption patterns, state consumer perceptions and barriers to regular legume consumption, and to identify approaches to promote regular legume consumption. It's with great pride I'd like to now turn the webinar over to Dr. Bobe, who will discuss reasons for the disconnect between dietary recommendations and legume consumption patterns in U.S. adults. And be sure your mic is off mute.
So, can you see the presentation? So I would like to talk about the reasons for the disconnect between dietary recommendation and legume consumption patterns in US adults. For me, this is a research which I have been involved. Now it should be nearly 20 years, and I'm very excited to share some of my knowledge. Legume, how did I get involved with legume consumption? It got involved over actually a dietary trial, a polyprevention trial, which was done in the early 90s. And in that one, we found that, which was promoting high fiber, high fruit and vegetable intake. And when they looked at the endpoint, which was colorectal adenoma recurrence, they saw the dietary pattern which was consistently associated with a decrease was high legume consumption pattern. High legume consumption is much higher what are current dietary recommendations. It would be about 0.5 cups per day. And I was very intrigued by it. The other thing which intrigued me very much, I found a study also done in the early 90s, which looked at dietary patterns of older adults, and the only dietary pattern which was associated with a longer life and survival was actually a high legume consumption pattern. So then I asked myself, how comes that not many people eating this high legume consumption while there is so many reported benefits of it? And that's why I want to talk more about this one. And I have to go to, let's see. I will. So legumes here, and here legumes are defined by the plant family, which is called Leguminosæ, which is a dicotyledon herb. Generally, they are one of the biggest plant families. We are primarily interested in the fruits of it, and you can here differentiate them on the lipid contents between the ones which will have higher lipid content, which are soybeans and peanuts, and the ones lower in lipid content. The soybeans and peanuts, in this study, I don't include those ones. That has to do, soybeans have a strong, there is another influence, which are the phytoestrogens, which sometimes actually on cancer have a promoting effect. The peanuts, there's often a problems with allergens associated with it. So I went for the lower one. Here there are three groups. We have the mature, the immature, and the germinated ones. So the fresh peas and fresh bean sprouts, and then the dry beans. I put them all three together because they are all the same fruit. However, often in dietary classifications, they are separated into different groups, which I find very very confusing to the consumers. So I had to know for the last one a nice title, and so I called them blips, which is bean, lentils, and peas, which are the primary one of these groups. Why was I interested in promoting legumes? There are lots of nutritional benefits, which you're probably aware of. When you look at the lipids, they are low in lipids, they're high in PUFA, they are very low in saturated fatty acids, they have zero cholesterol. Then we have, if you go on the protein, it's a relatively for a plant high protein content. If we are looking at the carbohydrates, it has a low glycemic index, they are high in fiber, they have usually complex carbohydrates, and they have actually resistant here. They have also a high amylopectin content in the starch, which actually helps with the digestibility, slowing it down. If you are looking at here special nutrients, they are high in iron and zinc, low in sodium, high in B vitamins. Specifically, they are a very good folate source. And I got into it, they are rich in antioxidants and flavonoids. Now looking at some of the concerned compounds, one is the imbalanced amino acid profile. But that one can be easily balanced out with other grains. The high starch content, this is a constant battle to understand that starches are not created equal. High starch doesn't necessarily mean high glucose, because this one specifically, there is a high amylopectin content, which decreases the degradability of starch. So less starch is actually nutritionally available. So the glucose increase is much smaller. Then there are one thing which have been a constant problem is the galacto-oligosaccharides, that is soluble fiber source, which can cause gas. However, this is part of the fiber group. There's also a lot of benefits with these specific groups. Then there are the phytic acid, protease inhibitor, and lectins. These decreasing the nutrient absorption, and those ones can be taken care with proper preparation methods. And if we are going then, 2016, FAO said that was the International Year of Pulses. And what I want to talk about it here is the environmental reasons for pulses. Pulses is one of the plants which can be grown nearly everywhere except for in here at the polar regions and in deserts, because they are, what their strength is, they are highly water efficient. They are also, they can nitrogen fixating properties. So they actually don't need as much nitrogen than other plants, because they can fix the nitrogen out of the atmosphere and provide it to other plants. So they are perfectly for intercropping, providing the nitrogen for other things. Also, they are in the height, you can perfectly use it with other crops. That makes it also very nice as a multi-purpose things, in terms of it can be, you can not only sell it, but also consume it yourself. That makes it different from things like coffee or bananas, where you basically, a problem creates, you basically export your product, but then doesn't have anything back for yourself. So, and then the last thing is it's food security. The great thing about pulses compared to other things is they can be much better stored, because you have dry storage. So you have nutritional reasons and you have also environmental reasons why this is important. Now, one of the main points I want to drive down is how these have disease prevention properties, why they are good. As I showed you from the nutrition side, they are very important. I looked at also at the idea of chronic diseases. How do they help with obesity and chronic diseases? And what I found was, my primary research is on colorectal cancer, that the general meta-analysis said there was no conclusion because there was limited information available. So I did a meta-analysis of human studies and as well as animal studies. And what you see here is in the conclusions, regular grain legumes consumption may confer a chemopreventive effect of colorectal neoplasia. What is very important, this is a relatively high amount. So this is even higher than the amount currently recommended. So in order to have benefits, you have to consume sufficient amount of it, and that's often seemed to be a problem. So regular legume consumption provides a chemopreventive effect. Like I said, besides that one, it has benefits in terms of obesity prevention. There was another study I was involved where people could eat as much beans as they wanted at end of a dietary trial, and they were losing very well weight. The main reason which it appeared to be based on the responses was the people felt more full by eating beans. So they felt less of a hunger thing. When you look at here cardiovascular disease, the results are not as clear-cut as, for instance, for cancer, where there seems to be more of a protective effect. Part of the thing is how it actually regulates here cardiovascular event. It increases fatty acid oxidation, and against that more fat is here put in adipose tissue. So the primary thing how it works is it makes sure that more of the fats get actually oxidized and not accreted in the tissue. So can regular legume consumption prevent chronic diseases? I would say that's obvious, yes. And the primary benefits is it works for obesity prevention, it works on cancer recurrence or cancer incidence, It works a little bit on cardiovascular disease, but not as much as other things. And the primary mechanism seems to be associated with some of the compounds promoting fatty acid oxidation. If we are now, the next question is do US adults consume regularly legumes? And what we know is from things in the 1990s that only 14% of adults consume dry beans on a given day. So what you see here is generally in the 90s, it was around 10%, I would say, use regularly dry beans. So we were interested what it's happening more recently. So we used enhanced data from 2011-12 and from this another cycle 13-14. And it's 2 days here, 24-hour dietary recall, and we looked for the primarily legumes. They give you the serving sizes. We weight them according to it. And what you see is on these 2 different days, 73% of the consumers didn't consume it. So then we made 3 groups. I have this one is marginal. It's 0.01 till 0.24 cups per day legumes consumption. This is under the dietary guidelines, which requires 1.5 per week. So this one we put there, the DG stands for dietary guideline. Then the next group is considered the healthy group. So they were over the dietary guidelines. These are about 8.2%. And then the disease prevention group, as I said, you need at least 0.5 grams per day to actually see disease benefits. And you could also see it, then the nutrition profile changes once you go so high. And there were 7.8% who went over these things. I keep these 4 colors throughout it because I use this also for our blip study as to show what are different consumers actually thinking about it based on their legume consumption. So when you look at it, it's about 15% who consume sufficient amount. And it's primarily dry beans and some green beans. So it's only a quarter who actually consume it. So I would say no. Then we did a blip survey, and the blip survey was done under HIP parents and guardians. HIP was an outreach organization, a healthy youth program of the Linus Institute, where we helped people adopt a healthy lifestyle. That was cooking, nutrition, garden-based program. There was actually also an exercise program. And that was primarily community focused around Corvallis, where I'm stationed. And part of it is we wanted to see, we looked at the split beans, lentils, peas, and what these parents were doing and how we could promote actually peas more. We did that in 2017, and the group is, we had about 143 a year responses to it. Primarily, these are females because these are the people who primarily do the cooking in here. And the age was most 26 to 55 years old. So this is primarily was for young families focused. So we asked, how often and how much of the following legumes did you eat in the past month? Choose all that applies. And we gave them this different beans. We gave them cup sizes, how often they ate it. And then we asked them what was the most common dish size. The legume groups was based on the FAOs, the serving size and frequencies was from the polyp prevention trial, and the common dish was from Pulse Canada. And when you, this would be the answer, the page they had to answer about it, and you see there the different, we made pictures of the different types of beans. And what did we get out of it? On the left side is for the blip, and on the right side is what we saw in the enhance, and the results are very similar. Dry beans are the ones which are consumed the most. Then we go to green beans and peas, and the other groups are smaller. When you see the next one would be probably lentils. So we had a little bit higher on blips than concerns to the enhance, but more or less very, very similar in terms of it. And you have to know this group, the blip people, that are more health conscious people who are reporting to it because they are interested in nutrition education. So here then we look at, as you see, compared to the other one, what was very interesting is, I can tell you. So here you see 35.7% didn't consume in the last months any beans, and you have here a higher number who especially go into disease prevention. I can tell you half of the 35.7% said they are regular legume consumers. However, in that during that specific season, which was October, November, they didn't consume any of that one. So for me, it is, we had one disconnect already, that people considered themselves regular legume consumers without eating legumes. So here we look at it, the regular is what you see, there's 27.3% who would have consuming sufficient, that you have actually a chronic disease prevention benefits. So do they eat enough? No. Is there a disconnect between dietary recommendation and legume consumption? And here there are multiple programs to promote legume consumption. Food Hero, Snap Ad, so they are cooking with lentils month. And shortly after the study, lentils became very, very promoted. But here you see already where the problem starts. It's a school lunch program. So they put 0.5 cups per week. If 0.5 cups per day is needed to promote actually health, 0.5 cups per week is not doing anything. So it's inadequate. We have also FAO, parts Canada, parts Michigan bean consumption. There are lots of programs they have now here made with pulses, a specific brand to actually show that it is for pulses. What are the challenges? And I want to put all of them here. There is one perception that beans are inferior to meat. And it's a very common conception. It's basically that beans are the poor man's meat. What is common in many of the studies, and we saw it as the same in the BLIP study, is there are known health benefits for specific to legumes. Many people consider it is another vegetable, so they do not even see that it does anything specific. Then there is a problem. And you see it with the concerns, digestive health, anti-nutritional compounds, toxin, and high CHO content. Many diets specifically exclude beans because of, for instance, the paleo diet, the Whole30 and the keto diet, because of the carbohydrate content, or there are toxins involved with it, like you say, the protease inhibitors and so on. Then there are taste and texture concerns. There are people don't like the texture of it or the taste of it. And then there is, of course, preparation time here, preparation challenges associated, because you have to, especially the bigger beans, you have to soak them sufficiently. And then one of the biggest problems, which I say, it's the inconsistent definition and categorization for legumes. I mean, I cannot imagine anybody who it took me forever to understand how each part would put legumes. So USDA, for instance, puts legumes into 6 different food categories. If that's not confusing consumers, I don't know what would be. So in the dietary guidelines, they say regular is 1.5 cups per week. This is an amount which several studies have clearly shown does do nothing, no health benefit. The vegetarian one would be more getting into a health benefit. The problem is on the my plate, there is no space for my plate. There is a vegetable and protein, and often when you see the things on the meal plans, the beans are somewhere in the protein and in the vegetable group. So they will be put somewhere in between. So there is no space for beans. And then when you look at the dishes, it's primarily main and side dishes of beans and peas. So we use the health belief model to understand better where is the disconnect about it. So one of the constructs is the perceived importance, and we ask 2 parts of it. Do you consider it as part of a healthy diet? Do you think beans prevent diseases? So they have a direct disease benefit. And then what your intentions to act? Would you actually eat more? We will later come to attitudes and beliefs and preferences. So if we are looking here, these are the specific questions. Is it part of a healthy disease? And you have a 5-point Likert scale to agree, disagree. Will it prevent me from getting sick? And would you be eating more legumes? If we are now looking again at our 4 groups, the ones who don't consume and those the ones who consume enough, I have put quotes on top of their word in it, and based on the color, you know where they are coming from. So most people agreed it's part of the healthy diets. However, those who do not consume it do not necessarily believe it. Half of them do not see any health benefits of it. They think beans can be easily replaced by other meats, vegetables, and fruit. This is incorrect based on several studies who showed the specific benefits of beans cannot be replicated by other vegetables, fruits, or meats. There is no combination who can replicate the specific benefits which beans give. So the second one is it prevents diseases. Here you see how much people coming down in percentage-wise. You see here you had nearly everybody still believe the healthy diet, but it doesn't necessarily prevent diseases. In the none, they say you can use other things from getting sick. Legumes, they always constructed disease as some kind of an acute disease. They're not necessarily considering chronic diseases as diseases. As you see, the 3 higher group, there was a lot of people, they agreed, but they hadn't seen research on this. So here there seems to an opportunity, learn more about the research to show that actually the disease prevention, and that is specifically cancer decrease, increase in survival, especially if you are older, and it's obesity prevention. And then last, were they willing to change? Here you see basically an arc. You see the high percentage, many of them thought they eat enough legumes. They didn't know how to increase their legume consumption. On the other things, you have people in the low group, they didn't want to increase. They didn't like it, didn't do anything good for it. They didn't see health benefits, and they didn't think they wanted to change to begin with. So what we need in it, most people see only that it's here beans as a vegetable or a non-meat protein source. So non-meat is, if you want to have a meat replacement, you use beans. If you want to use beans, is another type of vegetable. This is both not true. It's clearly shown that actually it has specific health things, health benefits which cannot be replicated by other vegetables. Can regular legume consumption prevent chronic diseases? Most of the people didn't know that it was doing. Now we looking at the benefits and challenges with regular legume consumption. We saw we had only only a quarter who actually ate enough. What kind of challenges had these three groups? We have already seen that the ones who didn't consume it didn't believe it would do anything good, and just didn't like it here. So I asked for each the things, the top 3 benefits and the top 3 barrier on this internet things. And here are all the options they had to have: delicious, affordable, available, part of my culture, good for health, rich in nutrients, easy to prepare, know my tasty recipe, protect environment, other. And then the 3 here, barriers is dislike taste, trouble digestion, not part of my culture, diet limits legume intake, take long time to prepare, expensive, difficult to find, don't know how to cook, don't know tasty recipe, contain non-nutritious compounds and toxic, allergic to legumes, no barriers, other. So here the health benefits are they, as you see, the more they consumed, there was more health benefit. Nearly at least half people thought it was healthy, but the nutritiousness got a little bit lower about it. People, I don't think, know about, for instance, a high folate content. The barriers were primarily associated with digestive problems. As you see, all of them, you see here, problems with physical side effects with that one. And this has primarily with the galacto-oligosaccharides. So you can actually select your beans based on galacto-oligosaccharide content. And those ones with higher one, you shouldn't use if you know you have problems with it. Then diet restrictions. Here you see the 17%. It's a lot of people have been told not to eat beans because of the high starch content, because that would increase type 1 diabetes, not knowing that it's high in amylopectin, so a resistant starch who doesn't increase actually glucose, so that it's actually safe for a diabetic to eat. And then few people have non-nutrition or allergies, but primarily the benefits is healthy, people like it healthy and nutritious. Problems is digestion for it, and that is the health one. Not good for digestive health versus good for digestive health. People who have problems digesting it, and there are solutions to it based on the galacto-oligosaccharide content. Now we coming here, taste problems. What are the taste problems? Those one who like to eat it because they like their taste, it's quick to prepare, they have some recipes to it. But you see, taste recipes are both in the benefits as well as in the challenge thing. The taste, what some people like, other people hate. They have a hard time with the cooking of it, especially in soups. They feel they are pasty, they cause gas, they are just not delicious at all. So you either enjoy it or you dislike it. So here really recipes will help. Then it is now becoming for the third problem area, and that is preparation. Is it easy prepared, cost and availability? Here you see preparation is both benefit as well as barrier as one of the higher ones. What you feel is very with the barriers, actually, you see, if you look at the lowest ones where I said no barriers as an option, that was actually most people, especially the ones who are high consumers do not see a barrier for it. So here it seems to be, we think the preparation is such a big thing. It comes more down to health benefit, yes or no, and taste and texture, yes or no, where people have it. What you also see is the preparation barriers here in this. The ones, the green people, the one on the disease prevention, they have actually mastered how to use beans. They know enough recipes, they know how to prepare it. The other ones are more struggling with it. So what it is, the thing, the big 4 points is the health benefits, the taste, texture, the preparation, and the recipes, which distinguish those who use a lot of beans or not. Either you like or dislike it, you see health benefits or not, or you have you know how to prepare it and have recipes or not. So now we ask for the preferences and ideas for how we could increase it. And so we asked about it, what would you replace? Because if you eat something more, something else has to go. And then the second one is share with us your success stories. And if you see here the multiplates, they could choose between refined grains, meat, and starchy vegetables, because these are the three where people would usually use beans instead of other starchy vegetables, instead of refined grains or in meats. And this is actually also the replacement tissue when you look at diseases, when you then compare it. And I want to draw you on to the meat group. The meat group are the one, the meat people are least likely to replace, except for those ones who are more in the high vegetable consumption to begin with. So you have the other ones, they are willing to let more go of the refined grain or other starchy vegetables. And what we saw as the easiest way to do it was really pairing it with grains or starchy vegetables, so that people, you basically put some in it. We have also seen it with meat. If you replace some of the meat with that one, people are more open to the change. Complete replacement does not seem to be working at all. And we asked specifically how much percentage. You can probably, people are into the 10 to 25%, they are willing to go for it. What are the success stories for legumes? The success stories from legumes is the crock pot. Any slow cooker works super with beans. Beans have a taste problem and a texture problem. And slow cooking with a lot of spices really works for them, because then they can incorporate a lot of other things in it. So I can say, if you want to increase legumes, crockpot or any kind of slow cook idea will work perfectly, because then beans who taste otherwise slightly bland will get more things to it. Then the second goes over the red lentils. Lentils is, I think, the secret weapon in this whole thing. The lentils, people think about beans, legumes just about beans. Lentils give another dimension to it. I like them. I like also some of the smaller beans. They are much faster to cook than the other thing. You have to not necessarily soak them. That is definitely working. The third one is the canned black beans with cheese on a wheat tortilla. What works there it is to increase creamy texture. People like creamy. They don't want the tasty. If they can get something creamy with it, so like milk products, beans like milk products. It makes it more desirable for people. So that is, you want to, when you pair them, you want to get something a little bit sweeter, need to be a little bit creamy. Consumers like firmer texture, so don't mush it too much. I like smaller beans, they can keep a better texture usually. You want to have tasty recipe, and especially the crock pot helps with that. You want to make it easy prep, so what I do actually is I pre-cook my beans and then I incorporate it in other things. And so I do pre-cook, freeze it, and then I have always some beans available which I can then incorporate in other things and pair it, combine it with something. Don't do all or nothing. So we have here 3 groups. I call them skeptics, starters, and experienced. The skeptics will not eat it. They don't believe in the health benefits. They're concerned about the high carbohydrate. They don't like the taste nor the textures. They are very concerned with the digestive health and unlikely to change. Digestive health really depends on what kind of bean, how much oligosaccharides it is, how slowly you introduce it, and how much you eat. You can't increase 2 things. These ones, the oligosaccharides, the bacteria in your stomach will love them and will cause gas if you suddenly go very high on it. The starters is, they know, they believe it, and they're willing to change, but they don't know quite how to change it yet. They are often only connected to as a main or side dish, and they usually only use beans. They don't use lentils or peas or other things. The experienced ones, they have learned a lot of different benefits. They know the benefits, they know the preparation. They actually would like to know more health benefits about it. And they are interested in more recipes. They are especially want to go out. So what my recommendation is, it's a targeted information. Everybody wants to have recipe ideas, but the prep information, especially starters and skeptics, needs. And the skeptics actually have to know that beans are not like other vegetables. It's different. So that is what needs to be done. When we look here at the nutritional guideline, if I want to go, we have to increase the amount. And we need to specifically display legume as a food group on my display. And the culinary application is, we have to use other legume types besides beans and green peas. We have really lentils, anything what I call it smaller beans, really will help to increase variety. If we don't add variety, people will only eat so much of a certain food. They will get tired of it also very quickly. And you always pair legumes. Here you see these ones. These are where people are knowing a lot about. Where we won't like to go is, how can we introduce it in breakfast items, snacks, in dips, and that's, people don't know as much about it. And this one, they don't know anything about it. I think healthy snacks, cakes and pastries, we can include it in any kind of dish from morning to evening. Then we can have the high consumption, but we have variety is king here. See, and these ones do it like as beans just for snacks, as hummus, as Buddha bowls. So they really go for the variety. And here, these are the main thing. Why to eat beans? They are nutritional. They are very versatile and tasty. They are very affordable, and they are sustainable for the environment. And that is here I thank you for all the recipe resources and the references. And I'm open now for any questions.
Wonderful, wonderful, Dr. Bobe. Thank you so much. And we do have quite a few questions that are very intriguing, which we are looking forward to your answers. So I'm going to start right away. In your meta-analysis, did you find that the amount of legume needed to be consumed for health benefits varied with the age of the consumer?
We didn't look at it. The problem was we had not enough people who would have worked with on here, which gave us cancer risk estimated per age. I'm thinking right now about, I did myself the poly prevention trial, if we actually ever stratified by age. And I don't think we ever did, but this is a really good suggestion.
Great, great. Do different beans, legumes, and peas provide different health benefits? So is consuming a variety of legumes critical for conferring health benefits?
I primarily go for variety because of keeping the consumption high enough up. Did anybody look at a variety of beans? Everybody tests usually in animal trials a specific compound. What we, however, looked at, we looked in beans in one study at different parts of the bean, on the fiber part and on the soluble part. And the soluble part had more health benefits than the fiber part. So I believe different peas will have different benefits, because what beans do, it is not only the fiber resistant starch part, it is also the other parts who have benefits. And different beans and legumes will have a different nutrient profile and thereby provide different benefits.
Okay. Are there established ways that can reduce negative side effects associated with legume consumption that are easily communicated?
So what most people, when I read the literature, they always say slow. You have to increase it very, very slowly. I agree with it. So when I, for instance, when I eat beans, I make it very, very slow, that I slowly up it. They say you have to go over 2 weeks to increase every time on 10%. When you do even animal studies, you have to increase slowly. Otherwise, they don't eat it.
Okay. Which beans are lower risk for bloating and gas?
The one which were lower, I wish I could tell you exactly what it is, but lentils are lower than beans.
Okay.
You have to just look at what here, look at all your bean things and look for the oligosaccharide content that they give you that information. That is the number who tells you that is a compound who causes the bloating. And if it's closer to 10%, bloating are much more likely.
Okay, all right. With the beneficial GSOs in legumes, those are the oligosaccharides, have there been any commercially available prebiotic or probiotic systems that incorporate the legumes for gut health?
I'm not aware of it, but I didn't specifically look for it either.
Okay, all right. And then could you repeat, it was one of your earlier slides, what is meant by grain legume?
A grain legume is it's a mature legume. The legume is in the grain form. So if I can show it, what it is, legumes can be utilized. It comes from FAO description. The grain part and the non-grain part can be utilized. And you say the grain part when you just use the seed.
Okay, all right, good. And then in your remarks, you talked about the different categories of legumes and the inconsistency in those. How would you see we should try to get some alignment on the definitions or the categories of the legumes to help consumers?
I personally would put, I call it the blip legumes as a separate group and keep them away from the soybeans and the peanuts. And it's just a special group because it is a different group and it works as a different group, at least on health benefits.
What surprised you in your research that you have done so far with consumers on legume consumption?
My positive was the blip people. They had so many great ideas how to increase it. Many things I didn't come across before. And I found these people such a rich source of help for it. What was for me surprising negatively, I didn't have any kind of negative surprise. I was so amazed how resourceful many of them were. Because when I looked at the literatures, I never saw the resourcefulness of people as much as I saw actually in my study.
In one slide, it referenced Food Hero.
Yeah.
What is Food Hero?
Food Hero, Food Hero is from here, from Oregon State University, but it is actually sponsored and sanctioned by USDA. So you look under Food Hero and Oregon State University, and it gives you here dietary recommendations.
And where would you look to find a list of the galactosaccharide content of beans? Where is a good resource or reference for that?
I found them at the USDA site.
USDA?
Yes,
Okay.
they have to describe all the foods with galacto-oligosaccharide content. I found also there was an old guide out of the 70s, and I had to look at galacto-oligosaccharides of different foods, and that guide came up. But those ones are all very old. So they are all 70s, 80s.
So has USDA kept current with their current database?
Yes.
So that would be a place to look for that.
Yes, they have a current one, but it's not as easy accessible as the other one here, the old one.
Your categorization of marginal, healthy, and disease prevention categories was extremely interesting. Any other key takeaways that these categories showed you?
For me, the key takeaway is really for disease prevention, we have to go higher. And those ones who are higher, they are actually more able to, that makes an impact. My hope this is really to encourage people to incorporate it in broader so that they are more into the disease benefit category.
Okay, good. And let's see. So you mentioned some of the recipes, and are you familiar with recipes in the breakfast category that are using beans, or did any of those come through from your consumer research?
It came through from my, actually the consumer research didn't talk anything about it. Okay. I came across it from my graduate student who is from Sri Lanka, who talked about how she uses it like hash. She uses it like, how to say it? She made a curry recipe. It's a curry bean rice recipe. She eats regular in the morning. So that one I knew. The other one, I actually use beans with my eggs together. So I make my daughter beans and put some of the lentils, the smaller beans with it. So to enrich it.
And just curious, aside from black bean brownies, are there any other desserts that you're familiar with that use beans?
You can use beans with breads. I haven't seen so many used it. I see it often where it would work best as breakfast snacks, like this here, like protein bars or so. They would work perfectly with it. So if you know how to make like this health bars, I think they are the perfect sauce with beans, because bean has the right texture for it. Put some honey with it, will be very nice. Put some crunchy elements to it, I think works perfect.
And are you aware of any allergy issues with beans?
They are usually not much mentioned. That's why we asked the question, because people talk about allergy issues. When they talk about it, I think they are thinking more about the digestive health issues associated, and then they think it is a thing with it. The other thing, there can be allergy problems if you don't cook them before. So if you don't soak them, some of the anti-nutrient things, you can get sick. The lectins, you can get sick from it. The problem with the lectins, as bad as they are also cancer preventive.
And are you familiar of what age people tend to introduce beans and legumes to children? It
So
wouldn't be, yeah.
So the ones which I know, so the families, they did it with 2-3 years. They did relatively early. What was interesting, and I had asked about it, when you look at the age group, the biggest problems is the middle, I call it the outside groups. Many people, as they get older, they think they cannot eat beans anymore because it's not good for their digestion. And just the opposite is true. And then we had the other group, which was very low in consumption, were here young adults, I call them, the one called shortly after college, and they didn't know what to do with them.
Great. Well, on that note, that's all the time we have for questions, Dr. Bobe. Thank you very much. Once again, the Michigan Bean Commission would like to thank you for sharing all of your expertise with us this afternoon. Today's webinar covered the disease prevention benefits of regular legume consumption, covered the current U.S. legume consumption patterns, consumer perceptions and barriers to regular legume consumption, and approaches to promote regular legume consumption. So a few reminders just about today's webinar. The continuing education certificate and the handouts are all available at the Michigan Bean Commission website to download. And a recording of today's webinar will also be available to download at the same website in a few days. So with that, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us. And again, thank you very much, Dr. Bobe, for joining us from Oregon. And if you'd stay on the line for just a moment after the webinar ends, there'll be a brief survey. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today.